Hey
Mamas.
mamas, I'm Jess.
I'm Erica.
And as you all may know, October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. So today we'll be talking to Kierra, which is joining us from Arizona. And also, guys, do you know what? This is such an important episode for everyone, whether you've experienced it or not, to kind of understand what women feel and how you can support that woman. Let's get right in, guys.
Hi.
Hi, lovely to meet you. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Sorry about the time. I don't know what happened.
Oh, no worries. I was like, I hope I didn't mess it up.
Mama's Code.
So we started following her a couple of months ago actually, and we absolutely loved her page because first of all, we started seeing all the illustrations she was doing with the baby angels, and then we realized that actually she was kind of a miscarriage awareness advocate person, and everything that we saw was just so heartfelt with, because it's such a major topic. Like, it happens every day, but there's such a taboo around it when it shouldn't really be like this. So we just wanted to hear your story. Tell us a bit about you, what inspired you to draw these baby angels.
Yeah, I've had five miscarriages myself, and I obviously always kind of wondered who they could have been or would have been. And that is traumatic. It's very traumatic to go through a miscarriage, and especially multiple miscarriages. And I ended up having three rainbow babies. So kind of along the way, I kind of just got busy. And then one of my friends had a miscarriage, and it just like brought up everything for me, like just reminded me of all that trauma. And I realized I still had a lot of work to do there. And so yeah, my therapist said to write down my feelings. It is a way to kind of help myself interpret it. But I went to write, and I ended up just kind of drawing. And I started off drawing with my brother. I have a brother who died of SIDS when I was little. So I started drawing him into our family photos. And then I was like, wait, I want to draw my babies into my family photos. And so I started doing that. And then I started just posting them on Instagram. I really didn't think anything would, but it ended up people wanted me to do it for them. People were so kind and receptive to me sharing about my loss. And I'm just kind of a very honest person. I don't really like to put on a front or anything. So I talk about things very openly. And it was amazing how people really wanted to hear that. And people were hurting and felt so lonely. And they needed someone to just say, like, what you're feeling is normal and you're not alone. And so it kind of turned into this
Mm.
platform where I was able to share my experience and also connect with other women who have gone through it and help them not feel so alone.
Once you hear someone tell their honest truth, you feel a bit more normal. You feel less shame to whatever you've been through. You feel like, oh my God, someone else experiences the same.
Yeah, it's not seen much like a stigma anymore because you're in someone else's shoes. I'm guessing like when you go through it, you feel like there's something wrong with you. And it's weird because I had a friend that she had a miscarriage. Unfortunately, she had like a really bad doctor in my conception because he wasn't supportive. All he said to her was like, oh, well, you're just another statistic and it just happens. You've got to move on. But no one can really make you feel what that person's feeling at that point. And because you feel so alone and you feel like you've let this baby down because you couldn't bring it to the world, like, we're all taught as when we're growing up, you're taught that you as a woman, you're meant to reproduce and have a baby. But no one really talks about, there is that possibility of you not being able to go full term and losing the baby even before, you tell anyone.
It's so true. And sadly, that's really common in the medical community. There's not much support for women going through loss. They kind of just send you home, and kind of like you said, like it's a statistic, like you're just a number, and you get sent home just with like, it's like a period, go home,
Yeah.
even though it's not like a period. And anyway, and they're sending us home so unprepared for what's to come, and that just adds to the trauma. If someone sent you home. I mean, like when you actually carry a baby to term, you get sent home with like postpartum care and you have postpartum checkups. But when you lose a baby early, there's no care for you. And it's so heartbreaking because, I mean, a miscarriage is always going to be traumatic, but it could be so much more lessened in pain if the medical community could really help support us and give us all the information to help us. So it's definitely an area that I am passionate about, hoping that doctors will start providing this information to women, especially about the miscarriage care. I don't know if you guys saw that
Yeah.
video I did,
Yeah.
but if you have to read the comments, if you haven't, there's thousands of them, but so many women are like, I wish I would have known about this. And it's crazy because it should be provided by our doctors. But so yeah, anyways, my hope is that we can raise awareness and women can start having more closure in losing their babies, because it's never easy.
Are the statistics also 1 in 4 women in the USA?
It's actually 1 in 4 pregnancies. So I think a lot of people hear 1 in 4 and they think 1 in 4 women. It's actually 1 in 4 pregnancies. So that's why it's common. Like a lot of women will have no miscarriages ever, and someone might have like 5, 6 or whatever.
So did you have any children before you had like your first miscarriage, or was your first experience of being pregnant a miscarriage?
My first pregnancy I lost. I was very blindsided. Like you said, I just thought, oh, you get pregnant and you have a baby in 40 weeks. And I didn't think like, oh, there's a possibility that I'm not bringing this baby home. And like we told our family the same day I peed on the stick. Like I was committed. Like I was like, there's no way this baby's not, like it didn't even cross my mind. And then I started bleeding actually at work. I found the blood and ended up going in and finding that my baby had died 2 weeks prior, but it took my body 2 weeks to notice. And so I lost the baby at 8 weeks, but it was such a shock because I had my blinders on and we told everybody, and it was really, really hard. So I was kind of jaded after that because I don't ever really know. I'll never be able to be as happy and as naive and like, blissfully unaware of reality as that time I first found out I was pregnant.
You know, when you go through a miscarriage, did you ever encounter your support group or, just people that are aware that you've been through this, that they'll just say to you, you're young, you can try again, or, at least you weren't very far along? Do you not think those statements just make you feel even worse? Because it's like, yes, I'm young, but I still wanted my baby. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, well, yeah, forget that baby. I'm just going to move on and you're going to just carry on having more. I'll forget that I was ever pregnant and I ever lost that.
Yeah, that's actually really common. I lost my first baby when I was 19. I'd only been married for 4 months. I was a very young bride. But I definitely, my own mother actually said that to me. She's like, you're young, you're going to have babies, you are. And it did not make me feel better. Made me feel like dumb for being sad about losing my child. And yeah, that's definitely a common misconception. I actually had someone on TikTok message me. She is 16 and she lost her baby. Her doctor didn't take her symptoms seriously, and she ended up losing her baby at 24 weeks because of preeclampsia, because her doctor brushed her off because she was young. Said, you just don't know what it's like to be pregnant. It's normal. And then because of that, she actually lost her child. So I definitely think when you're young, doctors don't take you as seriously. And also friends, they kind of brush it off like, oh, well, wasn't meant to be, or you're young, you'll have kids in the future. But really what we need is just validate our feelings. Let us know it's okay to be feeling sad and it's okay to still be sad. I think another thing is people like to move on and think like, oh, it's been like 2 weeks or it's been a month, it's been a year. Why are you still sad? And it's like, well, if you ever lost someone in your life, and there's no time limit on being sad about that person.
I think we've got a really close friend to us that went through miscarriage, and obviously we weren't these type of people that were like, oh, get over it. And because I think we knew that when that person found out she was pregnant, in that very moment, she realized how much she wanted it, even though it wasn't planned. And I think that's what people may not understand, that in that moment when you see that positive test, the amount of thoughts that rush through your head of imagining what the baby's going to look like, you get excited. Yeah, you're scared because you're like, oh my God, this wasn't planned. But I think you start loving the idea of being a mom in that very moment. But again, because people don't talk about it as much, they think whatever, or don't talk about it, and you just have to grieve by yourself. And, every time, maybe you've already been to the doctor, maybe you've already been told a due date. So every time the due date comes around, that person is, I'm pretty sure, thinking my baby would have been 1, or, it would have been their birthday. But if you were to say this out loud 10 years down the line, I'm pretty sure people are going to look at you like, mate, get over it. Like, it's not that deep.
Absolutely.
You've been through it yourself a few times. Was each miscarriage a different feeling? Did it get not easier, but did you feel you were able to kind of balance your emotions through it?
I mean, I think each time was absolutely devastating. But I do think I was more, not necessarily like it wasn't easier, but it was almost like I was numb. Like I kind of expected the worst at that point. I lost 3 in a row before I had my first rainbow. And so I just kind of, every time I found out I was pregnant, I just figured like, it's probably not going to work out. So like it kind of took the shock out of it, but it definitely still was very emotional. And actually my last miscarriage I had before my youngest daughter was my worst one, I would say. Just emotionally, it was so hard on me, even though I had been through 4 previous to that. It was just completely, I had so much hope. Like if hope alone could have kept that baby, like that baby would be here today, but it was not meant to be. I lost it a little after 6 weeks. Like I wasn't very far along, and it still just wrecked me. So I don't think it's something that necessarily gets easier, but I do think it kind of, what to expect, and that helps lessen the shock factor. But a lot of times people don't really think about, like, after you lose a baby, your body is still pregnant. Like the hormones are still in your body for weeks. And so it is still, if you, I don't know if you guys have kids, or if you've ever been pregnant, it's just like emotional. Like, I don't know about you, I cry all the time when I'm pregnant. And so like feeling that all the hormones and emotions of being pregnant without having a baby is just awful. And so that's definitely one of those things that I don't know. I don't think it'll ever get easier.
We probably should have said Erica has 2 boys and I've got 1. We're not just random people here.
No, I figured because it's like mama codes. I'm like, they've got to have kids, but you never know.
But do you know what? Even when you've had your baby, no one really speaks about the 4th trimester, which is your body actually still going through the pregnancy and the hormones that are left in you. So they just say, you've had your baby, you go home and you live a happy life. But actually, what happens with the transition of my body, it's taken 9 months to produce a child, and you expect it to just be hormone free. You're back to your mental, the way you were before a baby. Like,
totally. And that's something so unspoken about miscarriage as well, because your body still goes through that same process as if you carried the baby to term. So you're going through a postpartum period still, except you were expected to like not act like you're going through it, act like it didn't happen. I've carried my 3 children to term, and even carrying them to term, people expected me to just be like, oh, the baby's out and now I'm the same as I was before. But I actually suffered from very severe postpartum mood disorders after my 4th, where it became life-threatening and I had to get treated. And so I think it's hard with miscarriage because people often feel the same way. They feel postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, and they just think, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I had this person email me. I think she found me on, I don't know if she found me on Instagram or TikTok, but she emailed me and she was like, I don't feel like myself. I lost my baby. I don't feel like myself. I'm feeling angry all the time. My fiance is going to leave me because he just thinks I'm crazy now. And I was like, did you know that anger is the #1 symptom of postpartum depression? And that your body is actually still going through those same hormone withdrawals. And I was like, please, I kind of gave her some tips to go see a psychologist or get help from her doctor. And she was like, oh my gosh, like I looked up the symptoms. This is exactly what I was going through, but no one told her that it could even happen to her. So It's definitely something that women should be on the lookout for after loss, as well as having a baby at term.
Mama, I love you.
You say that you had 3 miscarriages before you had your first rainbow baby. Did you have any fears?
Oh,
Because obviously,
absolutely.
like with your new pregnancies that you got to full term, all the trauma like miscarriages leave you, you're still in your head, you're going to be thinking, oh my God, am I actually going to make it?
Miscarriage or pregnancy after loss is very different. It was every time, like every single time you go to the bathroom, you're checking for blood. Every single, like, you hold your breath, like, oh, I hope there's nothing there. Or you'll be walking around and, you guys have been pregnant, when you're pregnant, you have a ton of like discharge coming out, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, is that blood? And you're like checking, like constantly expecting the worst, and just not wanting to talk about it, because then you have to tell more people that it didn't work out in that case. Just constantly trying not to feel connected to your baby, trying not to feel anything for your
Mm.
baby. It's impossible, but you try because you're so afraid of being hurt. I got a Doppler for my pregnancy so I could listen to the heartbeats. And it was kind of a good and bad thing, because sometimes I couldn't find it, like the baby would be in a weird position, and I'd call my husband and be like, I know she's dead, I know it. And he'd come and he'd find it, and he's like, it's fine, Kierra. But I always expected that, or if like the baby didn't move for an extended period of time, I'll assume the worst, start freaking out. I'm like doing handstands, like trying to get the baby to move, and it was definitely a very emotional time. I would never buy anything for the baby, because I didn't want anything left to like haunt me or remind me after, in case I lost it. Usually around 25 weeks, that's like 25 or 26 weeks, is the week of viability. And so if they were born at that time, then medical staff would do everything they could to preserve them. But if you lose them before then, it's just they don't do any medical care. So that was the time when I felt, okay, 26 weeks, I will probably have a baby. And that's kind of when I would let myself bond. But it was a very emotional mental game up until that point, and even up until they were in my arms, obviously. But yeah, definitely very exhausting 9 months.
I remember when I was working through Christmas when I was pregnant. I think I was like 4 or 5 months, and I would be sitting at the desk and I just couldn't feel him move. Honestly, I would have a glass of ice tap water by my desk at all times, because I was so paranoid. And just, you hear all these stories, and I really kind of closed myself to feeling the bond with the baby for the first like few months as well, because I always thought, oh my God, imagine I'm that one person that, doesn't have this baby. And so every time I wouldn't feel him move, I was on the phone to the midwife like, oh my God, my baby's not moving. And honestly, she was like on speed dial. And it was horrible, because it takes away from the beautiful experience that it should be, and calm, and what everyone paints out to be the perfect pregnancy. So I was always having water, and I was like, oh my God, okay, I can feel him. He's fine. And then an hour later, he's gone to sleep, and I'm like, oh, get the water again. I can imagine how, I guess, over the top it could be after or not over the top for the person that's experienced a miscarriage, because it's what comforts them, but for what other people may see, and they must be like, wow, she's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. It was, even my own husband was like, Kierra, calm down a little bit. But he got it. Like I was the same thing. I would drink like orange juice, something with sugar. I'm like, come on, baby, get hyper. Like, just keep moving. Like, I didn't ever want baby to stop moving. I felt my last baby move really early. I felt her move at like 10 or 12 weeks or something. And that was like the most comforting thing ever, just because I loved knowing that she was alive. So yeah, I think every mom, no matter where you are in pregnancy, is so comforting to feel those little movements. It kind of helps make things feel okay for that moment.
Obviously now you have 3 beautiful little girls, but when people ask you how many kids you have, do you include the 5 pregnancies you lost?
It kind of depends on who I'm talking to. If there are someone that I'm a good friend with, or something like that, I don't mind. I'll usually say, yeah, we lost 5, but we have 3 little girls. But if it's just like a stranger, I don't really care to explain to them, and I'll just be like, yeah, I have 3.
Why do you think women are made to hide the loss of a baby, but are encouraged to share a pregnancy that goes full term?
I think it really just comes down to trauma. And I think there's so much guilt that comes, and it's not needed, but it's just something that I think almost everyone that has a miscarriage feels guilty. Like they failed, they did something wrong, it's their fault. And that's just kind of human nature, that we don't want to share things that we fail at or that we are guilty about.
Mm.
And so I think that's just kind of a natural reaction, on top of like we don't hear about it as much. You don't get on Facebook as much and see like, or Instagram and see like, oh, miscarriage announcement, or people don't even talk about pregnancy until like 12 weeks sometimes. And so because of that, it just kind of feeds the stigma of like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And some people are just like, it is so traumatic that they just emotionally cannot talk about it. And so I think everyone has their own journey and how they want to process that. But I love seeing women on social media and even in their own private lives talking about their losses. And I think it helps so much. So many women, whenever people ask me, like, should I share about my loss? I'm always like, yes. You never know who is praying to hear what you have to say right now. And you just never know who's following you, or who in your corner in your life needs to hear your story. And so I think as we share our stories, we are breaking that stigma and helping other women feel okay about their own journey too.
Yeah, we're definitely normalizing it. I remember when I heard someone say, I've had a miscarriage, I was speechless to the point that I felt like a terrible person for not being able to give the support I should have been able to give my friend, because no one talks about it. No one is, when you announce you're pregnant, it's because you've got the scan picture, you've got your baby's 12 weeks, but no one knows the fears and all the thoughts that go through your head pre 12 weeks. So when this person said to me, I've had a miscarriage, I was like, Jessica has left the building, because Jessica didn't know what to say. Also, at that point, I learned that it wasn't nice asking people, when are you going to have babies? It wasn't nice asking, oh, you guys are married now. When are you guys having a baby soon? Or when are you having another baby? Because I learned that you don't know what people are going through. Some people may have been trying to be pregnant and they've had multiple miscarriages. Maybe they've not been able to get pregnant. And, there's everyone asking, when are you getting pregnant? We love to talk about these subjects to, I guess, help other people see that it's not so bad, and we're all here to support each other, and it should be normalized. And just because you're in a statistic, it doesn't mean you're not allowed to grieve. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to experience what, like you said, you would have experienced postpartum. If anything, it's even harder because you don't have a baby to show for why you're feeling this way. If you've got postpartum depression, but your baby is in the crib, in the cot, everyone will be so supportive. Everyone will be like, what do you need? What can we get you? But if you've, lost a baby and you've got OCD, you've got rage, depression, like, it's not normalized. So you just have to sit there in grief and get to a very unhealthy mental state of mind.
It's really heartbreaking, but I think, we're coming a long way, breaking down walls and stigmas. And I know I don't think that people say things purposely to hurt anybody. I think that like the best intentions come from what people say. That a lot of times it is really hurtful. Like I've been told like, oh, your baby's not doesn't even count. You were so young, you're gonna have a baby, you could just adopt, you could just you can try again, and all those things. Like it just doesn't, it's not comforting, because I still am sad that that little child is gone. And babies don't replace babies. And so yeah, I definitely think that asking when you are going to have a baby is such an emotional topic for women for sure. But I think, like you said, like we're coming so far and people understanding that everyone's journey is so unique and you just never know what people are going through.
Puppy. Good girl.
I don't know if Kierra would agree, but just like with everything else in life, talking about your miscarriage, talking about what you're feeling is a healing process. Because I think for the most part, if you keep everything inside, and now it's becoming more normalized, so people are talking about miscarrying, stillborn babies, everything is out there. It's not a taboo anymore that, oh my God, no one can know that I've had a miscarriage, because it's frowned upon. It's a personal decision for me, I think, whether you're super excited and you want to tell your close ones, or you want to wait out because you don't want to have to go through. I think it's more having to then go back and explain to every single person when clearly you don't want to believe it yourself.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I totally agree. I didn't tell, obviously my first pregnancy, we told, all of our family members right away because I had no idea. But after that, I didn't even tell anyone outside of just, my husband and I, because it was so hard when people were like, "Oh, aren't you pregnant?" Like, and you're like, "No." And it was like, I didn't want to have to keep talking about it because it was so painful for me at the moment. Um, but I regret and I wish I would have trusted like a close number of friends, or someone, just had someone outside of my husband, because I love my husband dearly, but he had, he's not a girl. He's not like into the fluff. Like, I want to talk about it over and over again, and he'll listen, but it just was like, I wanted a girlfriend to just be like, "Girl, I get it. I'm so sorry. Like, let's watch rom-coms and eat popcorn," and just like, it's just a different support that kind of comes from your girlfriends, I think. Not that obviously my spouse is awesome too, but I wish I would have trusted more people with it, because I would have felt so much less alone. It was such an isolating, lonely time of my life where I was grieving the loss of my child and it alone. And then I would go out and my friends didn't know, and it was hard because, they would be pregnant or they would have a baby, and it was so emotional that they had no idea what I was going through, so they couldn't do anything different, and then I would just go home an emotional wreck for no reason. So I definitely wish, I would have trusted more people with it, and also I think inform them like, "Hey, I had a miscarriage, or I am early pregnant, and this is what I need from you." And I think just telling people what you need from them helps so much, because most of the time people just don't know what to say, and they want to be there for you, but they just don't know.
And I think you end up pushing them away as well, because I felt like I've been through like a mental health journey, and I feel that at times when I felt like I had so much bottled up, and I didn't have the words to express what it was that I was feeling. I kept pushing people away from me, and I was just like, just leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it. But then it would get to a point where I actually needed someone to hear me out, but I already pushed you away. How am I going to say, "Oh no, wait, come back, I need to talk to you now"? Touching on what you've just said about your husband, Kierra, you both went through it together, but the grieving process for both of you is completely different.
Absolutely. I love my husband dearly, but we definitely processed it very differently. I think it's very common. I don't know if you guys felt this way too, but men often don't really feel connected to the baby until you're either like, they can like feel the baby move and stuff, and it's like, "Oh, that's a human," or like the baby's even born. Like, some men just don't really feel that connection, as much as the mom, and especially with miscarriage, when like there is no ultrasound most times, if you lose the baby early, there's nothing, there's no like baby to see necessarily, or it's like so small. Like, my husband never saw any of the fetuses. I saw couple of them, but I didn't know what to do in the moment. And anyways, so he definitely just didn't feel that connection, because it was kind of like, I'm pregnant, and then like 3 or 4 weeks later, I wasn't pregnant anymore. And so he the first one, I think he cried one time, but then after that, it was just kind of business as usual for him, because he didn't feel what I was feeling, and he was just kind of like, "Okay, well, we'll try again." And it was definitely a very different journey for us, because he was totally fine, and I was like a wreck, like a shell of a person that I was before. And I was so mad. Like, you should be a shell too. If I'm a shell, you're a shell. Like, I was like, this is not fair. And that was definitely part of my own healing and grieving process, is that I had to accept that we had a totally different experience. I was carrying the baby within me. I was the one going bleeding, having the birth process. Like I was the one that peed on the stick. Like you said, when you pee on that stick, like it's instant mother mode, you know. And so I definitely had a completely different experience than my husband, and coming to accept that that was okay was a process for me. I definitely resented him for a while, but through healing therapy, we were able to. I was able to accept it and not resent him. Realize that we were allowed to have our own journeys and process things the way we needed to.
Especially because as soon as you find out you're pregnant, even if you're like 24 hours pregnant, your life completely stops as you know it. You're no longer drinking. If you drink, if you smoke, now you want to walk around being bubble wrapped. Because I know my partner, he once said to me, I feel really bad that I don't feel the bonds that maybe you feel. And I said to him, but the baby is taking up my body, not yours. And at this point, the baby wasn't moving. So it was even harder for him, and he felt really guilty. And then now, like, he'd rather choose the baby over me.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. He would come home from work and I would be like sitting there like, excuse me, I'm pregnant now. So, I mean, this is what we're talking about 24/7 now. Like, because that was all that was on my mind. But he was like, no, I'm going to watch a show or whatever. They totally different experience for them.
How did it feel to have your first rainbow baby on your chest? Lay your eyes on them.
Oh my
On
goodness.
her.
It was yeah, her. I had her, I was induced on her due date actually. So I had her right at 40 weeks. And it was like 17 hours in labor, and I was so exhausted. When they held her up, my first thought was like, oh my gosh, that is huge. How does that just fit? Like, what is happening? And then they put her on my shoulder, and my mom was there, and I looked at her and she was crying, and it was almost like permission for me to cry. And I just started bawling my eyes out, like ugly crying. Like it was just like, ah, like, and it was so like it was magic. And she held her and she like didn't cry, like, but she was like beautiful, like she had good color and everything. She just wasn't crying right away. And she just looked around the room like, hey guys. And she held her finger up in like this number one, and she just like put it right here, like she was meant to be the first. So she just was such a sweet baby. I literally did not put her down. Like I carried her with me like for 12 months. Like I was like, she's connected to me. Like I never knew if I'd be able to have another baby. And so I was like, this might be it. And so I held on to that little girl. Like she did not know life of being put down like in a swing. Like that didn't happen. I had her all the time. I just ate it up. I was on cloud nine.
When I mean, I don't know if it's the same over there, but when you get discharged here, they're like, okay, oh my God, congratulations, you have your baby. But FYI, you still have to think about Sid. So now you're going home, like, I'm not going to be able to sleep. I now have to, I carried my baby full term. The baby is here. But now you're telling me that my baby might not make it to their first year because of Sid. So now you're just sitting, like, watching your baby to make sure if they're breathing, if their chest. And
yeah, so I had a brother who actually died of SIDS when I was 7. And so he just didn't wake up. He was actually 7.5 months old. So he's pretty old for SIDS. And so because of that, having experienced my brother just not waking up one morning, I literally stared at her all night. Like, guys, it was so bad. I would literally stare at the rise and fall of her chest. Like, if I was not staring at her, like, I was convinced, like, she was gonna stop breathing. Like, I was just like, my husband's like, go to bed. And I was like, okay, are you gonna watch her then? Because, like, this is what's keeping her alive right now. And I definitely felt that on a deep level.
The baby was probably thinking, Mom, you're a bit too close. Get out my face.
I can imagine, like, when you go really close to them so you can feel their breath. I could just imagine Kierra, they're like, okay, yeah, she's breathing.
Oh, yeah. I was constantly like, I put my hand right there, feel the breath. Like, I'm like, okay. Like, I definitely obsessive about it. Probably wasn't healthy, but like, that's how I got through. I didn't sleep, but you know, she was alive. So that's what mattered to me.
Who needs sleep anyways?
Right, I know.
But going through those milestones with her must have been so beautiful, like, you know, like an achievement, like I'm here, I want to be present in every single thing that
Oh
she's
yeah,
doing.
absolutely.
Like,
My husband was the same way when she was here. He's very sentimental and just like he didn't want to miss any firsts. And so, I mean, every little thing, like, oh, it's her first time seeing bubbles, or it's her first time like watching a movie, or it's first time, like every little like minuscule first time was documented and like FaceTime to people that probably didn't care, but it was like, guys, like this is a big deal. And I'm a photographer as well. And so like the amount of pictures I have of her first year would blow your mind. But it was like, I mean, I could probably like put like live footage of every moment of her first year because I was like, everything was so magical to me. I was like, this is amazing. Whatever, you know, mom vision.
was that the same with the other two?
My first two are 21 months apart. And so they definitely, both of them, I was just, my second daughter was super, super easy baby. And I just, oh my gosh, I love, like they were best friends and they absolutely loved each other. So yeah, I have a lot of pictures from them. My third baby, she just turned 2. She was born at 36 weeks because my water broke. And she had a lot of, she was in the NICU, and then she had reflux and colic for 8 months. So if she was awake, she was screaming, and the doctors were like, there's nothing you can do. And so because she was constantly crying, it's really hard to connect with something that's making you miserable. And I ended up having severe postpartum depression. And I did get treated, but like I said, it was life-threatening for me and my children. And it was really scary time to feel so not myself and so disconnected from my child, especially after everything I went through to get her. It was just hard. I felt so bad for not feeling those feelings, especially because my other two I did. So I knew the difference. My husband had to take care of her a lot at night because I just couldn't. I was so like mentally fuzzy and stuff. And so he has a really special connection with her now. And me and her have bonded since, but it was definitely a little bit more delayed because of the colic and the reflux. You know, having a baby constantly crying, it just takes an emotional toll.
Yeah. I mean, it is scientifically stated that the cry of a baby can actually drive you, you know, where you probably didn't even envision yourself being.
Yeah.
It's the pitchness of the baby's cry that it triggers your brain.
Totally. That's what happened to me. I ended up getting diagnosed with postpartum depression, anxiety, OCD, and almost psychosis because I let it. I kept thinking like, oh, tomorrow I'll be better. I'll get sleep and I'll be better. It just never got better. And eventually it got to the point where I called my husband. I was like, if you don't come, I had to break down at Hobby Lobby. I don't know if you guys have Hobby Lobby over there, but it's like a craft store. And I just like had a breakdown. Like my baby was screaming. I have a daughter with autism, so she was having a meltdown. And then like it was just like everything at once. And I got in the car and I told my husband, if you don't come and pick me up, I will drive this car into a lake and I'm taking everyone with me. Like I was so out of I was going crazy. Like this baby never stopped crying. So luckily I was able to get help. I got medicated, got therapy, and really got my life back. I wasn't allowed to be alone for like, I think 8 weeks because I was suicidal, homicidal. It was really, really hard. Like, yeah, this baby, like she
tested you.
Yeah, she still is like, that's her personality. Like it just became part of her now. Like she will cry, like even as a 2-year-old, like she will throw fits. Like she can go the distance. Like she's committed.
Oh my God.
We just are like, accept that about her now, but she's adorable. That's her saving grace. You look in her eyes and you're like, oh my gosh, that baby's so beautiful, but oh my gosh, she will drive you insane.
She probably realized that when you had her elder sister, you were so close up in her face. She was like, Mom, I'm not having any of that nonsense. I will cry so you know I'm here. I'm alive.
It's so right. I never worried if she was alive. That is for sure.
Mama, I love you.
here in the UK, often, like, you know, sometimes you miscarry naturally and like you have the bleed and the fetus comes out by itself. But sometimes you have to have, obviously, the surgery. I have a person I know, she had a miscarriage, so she was bleeding really heavily, but nothing came out. She obviously went to the hospital and they said that, yeah, it was normal, she was miscarrying, and that she had two options. She either wait for the fetus to come out on its own, or, you know, she could go in for the surgery, but she would need to book in an appointment. And she made it very known to everyone how, you know, like you've said, you know, one moment you're pregnant, the next you have no baby. But for her, it was like she went in because she was bleeding, she got told there was no heartbeat, and now she has to wait 2 weeks with a dead baby inside of her for her to have a surgery. That is awful. Like, for me, I don't think anything more traumatizing, because, you know, if you lost the baby, it's up there, top tier trauma. But knowing that, you know, like, well, I've been pregnant, Jess has been pregnant, obviously you've been pregnant, knowing, you know, if the baby doesn't move, we do everything for you, but you knowing that your baby has no heartbeat, so your baby is dead inside of you, and you still have to go on like nothing's happened because you have to wait until your next appointment for it to be removed.
That's so sad. I, I've never had to have a DNC, but I had a couple friends that have, and they were able to get it done the same day or the next day after they knew that their baby was gone. But I cannot imagine having to wait that long, knowing that would be so traumatic. My heart goes out to your friend. That is
That's
so
horrible.
awful.
Was that because of what's happening in the world right now, or?
No, it wasn't during Corona.
That is insane.
Yeah, she just basically got told that there was just too many people on the waiting list. She kept bleeding really heavily. So the doctor, that's why he was like, I think you just wait for it to come out normally. But it didn't. And she ended up hemorrhaging during the surgery because obviously all the blood she's lost from the miscarriage, but the baby was still there. I think she was like 11 weeks or something. So yeah, that was very traumatizing. Like, even till now, she had to come off of like social media and everything because she just couldn't deal with
I
it.
could imagine. I mean, there's so much trauma for women who have had loss on social media. Every pregnancy announcement, every baby picture, bump picture, very, very traumatizing for someone who just lost that dream. And so I think coming off social media while you're going through that is so healthy to just give your mind rest, because, those triggers are always going to be there.
All this time, I've just been thinking that the loss that you have with miscarriage, the loss that you have having a stillborn, and the loss that you have when your baby's died of SID, I think it's like tears. Well, this is what people would think, it's like, oh, you just had a miscarriage, you never met the baby. You waited 9 months, you had the baby and it was still, and then you actually experience and have memories with this baby. And honestly, the amount of, like you said, trauma that a woman has to experience in her lifetime to give life, to not be able to feel like you can just talk about it, and then you're judged for saying, I'm going to therapy, or why is she always sad, or why is she not going to my baby shower? I don't know. I just get really like emotional thinking about this, because we know a few people that, have literally had everything in the nursery ready for the baby and they've not come home with the baby. We sympathize with that pain, that because we have children, so we can imagine what it's like to, one day have your baby and the next day your baby's not there.
That's exactly what it's like, for sure. Like, when you're pregnant, you don't know if you're going to be pregnant the next day. And, same as SIDS, you put your baby to bed one day and the next day they're gone. I haven't experienced SIDS or stillborn personally, but I've had a very close friend that has, and I've never been to a more heartbreaking funeral in my life.
My little cousin was a stillborn, and I remember, I mean, I was quite young when this happened. I was like 9 or 10, and her pressure went really high, that the fever that she had in her body burnt the baby, and the baby was born completely like red and basically burnt from how much like it was so traumatic, and like she was able to hold her baby, and that image has stayed with me. I cannot even imagine. Like, it's absolutely horrible. Obviously they took pictures with the baby. And do you think that people take pictures of their babies, you know, whether it's miscarriage or stillborn, and post these because of a form of therapy? Or
For sure. I mean, I can't speak for individuals, but I think that having a picture of your baby is so, it brings that a little bit of closure, I think, to have that to look back on, because for these women, that is literally all they'll ever have of their baby. They'll never have first birthday pictures or graduation pictures or wedding pictures of this baby. That is literally the only moment they have with their child's body. I would definitely, if I was in that position, definitely want those pictures. I never took any pictures of my miscarriages. There were a couple of them I never even saw because it was so little. And the one that I did see, I didn't even think in that moment to, like, it felt like it was like I would be like shamed for taking a picture of it. But I think there's totally no problem. Like, if you take a picture of your baby, I think that is beautiful. And I think that if that's what you want to have, and if you want to share it on social media, I think that's beautiful too. Because I think that that is literally, you think of your own children, like there's nothing more valuable to you in your life. Nothing I've created ever come close to my children, and having, created this beautiful life. Like, I definitely think it's worthy of a photo.
it's like Prissy Teigen. She was so shamed last week when she posted these. I don't know if you've seen them. I mean, the whole world has seen them. But she was so, I read this article that there was this lady shaming her for taking these pictures, because she was saying she didn't want to feel part of their loss. She didn't want to feel, you know, horrible about seeing these pictures, because they were very graphic. I guess for her, she was so open about her pregnancy as well, that it was kind of fair to, I guess, put it out there. And it's her way of explaining. So, you know, minute I'm pregnant, the next minute here I am, we've just lost our baby.
Women want to share their baby, their miscarried or stillborn babies on social media, I really hope that they can be embraced in love after everything that they've gone through. If that's something that they want to share and preserve in their on social media, I really hope everyone will just love them going through just the unimaginable. I really hope that, we can all embrace that. And if you don't like it, just keep scrolling.
I agree.
So before wrapping up an episode, we like to give a golden tip, and seeing as you are our lovely guest today.
Yeah, absolutely. The number one thing I hear from women, and I also felt myself, is I just want to get back to who I was before. I want to feel like myself again. And it's so important to realize that grief and loss changes us. It's a transformative experience. You change when you become a mother. And it's okay to be different than you were before, and kind of getting to know who you are with loss and grief in your life, and becoming comfortable with having that in your as part of you. I think that is so important, and it really helps move forward when you can accept that this happened, this is part of you now, and it's okay. And it's okay to move forward. And moving forward isn't moving on. It isn't pretending like it didn't happen. Moving forward is taking everything that happened and processing it and adopting it into your life in a healthy way. Hopefully be able to feel joy and feel happiness again, because it's okay if grief has made you a little bit different.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Kierra. It was wonderful having you on. You've definitely shined a light to everyone that's going to listen to this and to us. You want other women to know that there's absolutely no shame in what's happened. Losing a baby is never a woman's fault. And I think women would often think, it is my fault. My body's failed this baby. Embracing what you've gone through, it's just a part of your journey.
You are empowering a lot of women through your Instagram and through everything you do. That's what we all need in 2020.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Guys, just before we go, I just wanted to say that, you know, if you know someone that's recently gone through a miscarriage or planning on having kids, if you could just share this episode. I think it's so important for all of us to know that it's absolutely okay. It's normal. It happens more than we imagine. And I think even if you don't want to speak about it, it's still comforting to hear other people's stories. Mama's Code out. Mwah.
Mama's Code.